Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. This is the Cliffs of Moher in MSFS 2024 and we're running 60 frames per second right now, and that's quite apt because this video is all about performance and getting those settings dialed in. I've already got a full in-depth VR settings guide on the channel. I'll link that in the notes below, but today's video is all about those easy top tips to give you really good performance right now without hardly any work at all. So if you're interested, stick around, stay tuned. And if you're just fed up with VR and you want good performance, then, well, this sponsor might be just for you. This video is proudly sponsored by the Tobii Eye Tracker 5, which is your all-in-one solution for head and eye tracking in your flight sim, especially if you're struggling with VR performance. Even I really enjoy using the Tobii Eye Tracker simply because it's so easy to use and you can enjoy full graphics fidelity in your flight sim without having to worry about really low performance. The Tobii Eye Tracker works with a whole range of different games as well, not just flight sims, and the eye gaze, as you can see here, works incredibly well even with sunglasses. It sits very neatly at the bottom of your monitor, and the quick and easy setup, even presets which are preloaded, means you can jump straight into your games and flight sims in a matter of moments. I have a full review of the Tobii Eye Tracker 5, and even though I'm a VR flight sim channel, I actually really recommend it for all of you out there. Right now there is a 15% discount if you order your Eye Tracker 5 between the 19th of January and the 9th of February. And further to this, you can actually win a free Eye Tracker 5 if you enter the sweepstake, which is in the link in the description below. The very best of luck to you all. Right then folks, so let's just go through some of these simple tips and common sense things that will help you understand why your sim is running poorly and what you can do to stop that. The first one is very simple and you don't have to do anything really. It's all about the fact that this sim is very much dependent on servers. I'll give you an example. Perhaps you've gone for an amazing flight yesterday, you haven't changed a single thing, you go back and suddenly it's running really bad and there's stutters, textures aren't loading in very well. Well, actually it might not be anything to do with your computer, but it could be the servers. That's unfortunately one of the issues with this sim. To get you this amount of detail you're seeing here all over the world, it is amazing, but it does come at a cost, and that is the servers can get clogged up sometimes because MSFS 2024 and 2020 is predominantly an online flight sim. So if that is the case folks, don't stress about it. Put the sim down, maybe go and fly an X-Plane 12, maybe do some Euro Truck Simulator, maybe mow the lawn, spend some time with your family, take the dog out for a walk, come back and maybe an hour or so later and you might be surprised that the sim is running much better. Sounds silly, doesn't it? Because I haven't told you to change this setting or change that, but it is something that people tend to forget, that servers do play a big role in the performance of the flight sim sometimes. So the next ones, well, I'm just going to go through a couple of what I call heavy hitters in the settings. Now the first one is TLOD, your terrain level of detail. That's, well, predominantly how far you can see the trees and buildings in the distance. But it's not just that, it's also linked to your ortho imagery. That's the terrain level of detail, the resolution of the photogrammetry and photo imagery. And if that is set too low, then you will get blurry textures. So I would recommend a bare minimum of 100 and ideally between 120 and 150. If you have a powerful computer, such as the one I'm running today, a 9800 X3D 5090 PC, by Stormforce by the way, not sponsored by saying this, but I'll throw it in there, you can get £300 off this very computer right now. I've got this set to 300 and it does look really nice, but it's very much a CPU thing. So ideally between 100 and 150 is the sweet spot for most systems. That includes also the clouds. Now we haven't got a great deal of clouds today in this little scene here that we're running, but clouds don't run them in ultra unless you're feeling very brave. You know, the annoying thing is clouds set to ultra do look really nice now. They have been upgraded, but also there is a larger impact now between high and ultra, up to around 5 to 7 frames per second in VR, depending on your system. Another one, a big one, is anti-aliasing, and that's linked, of course, with using either TAA mode or DLSS 4 or 4.5. So we need to talk about a few things here. I personally prefer TAA mode when I'm flying with glass cockpits, but if I'm doing this, looking at amazing scenery here, I don't need that clarity of the instruments, because steam gauges and scenery actually looks better with DLSS 4. So I would recommend most people these days to run DLSS 4. TAA mode is very nice, but you do need a lot of VRAM, a lot of GPU grunt. So also included in this is if you have a 20 or 30s graphics card, I would personally recommend sticking with DLSS 4 and running preset J or K, because it doesn't have the hardware acceleration features of the 40 and 50 series cards. If you do have a 40 or 50 series card, then feel free to try DLSS 4.5 preset AL or M. If you don't know how to do that, well, the best way to do it, in my opinion, is using the DLSS swapper you can see on the screen now. Very easy. All you need to do is download the latest driver. At the moment, at the time of recording, it's DLSS 4.5. There's a new version of it. You basically swap that file and then select your preset. Make sure you do that before entering the sim. Very easy, very, very convenient. I prefer that personally to the NVIDIA app, which can cause quite a bit of performance lag actually if you don't make sure that's closed. Talking of that, make sure you're only running the things in your taskbar that is linked to your sim. Okay, everything else can go, including, as I say, the NVIDIA app, the NVIDIA Experience app. That's the real hog. All these things make a huge difference to micro stuttering. And just getting back, by the way, to DLSS 4, it runs better if you can make sure your frame timing is at a decent level. You know, lower frame timing equals better smoothness. It's not all just about the FPS numbers. You could be getting, you know, 50 frames per second, but if your frame time is jumping all over the place, you're going to experience stutters, especially when waggling your wings and that kind of thing. So make sure to check my VR settings guide out. I do have a wealth of different settings there, baseline settings to run for different PC systems. And I always say, go to London City, Geneva, New York, heavy cloud. If you can get 30 frames per second there, you're good to go most places in the sim. Right, let's look at my little list here. So I've mentioned heavy hitters, T-Lod, clouds, anti-aliasing, what else? Refresh rate versus FPS locking. This is something I talk about a lot, folks, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but it doesn't sink in with some people, so I do have to mention this. You don't have to run 80 frames per second to enjoy flight simming. The wonderful thing about flying is, even though you are moving fast, it's not like a first-person shooter where you need really good performance. And all you really need is half of your FPS of your native refresh rate. So if you're running 90 Hz, make sure you've locked it to 45 frames per second. If you're running 80 Hz, run it at 40 frames per second. You get the idea. And the great thing about the micro OLED module I'm running here, it goes as low as I think 72 Hz. Which means you can go even lower with your frame rate, and as low as you can go provides more resources for your computer to run flight models, complex physics, weather, scenery, all the rest of it. Okay, so don't be obsessed with getting 90 frames per second, and if you don't, it's crap. You don't need that in a flight sim. And even though I have a 5090, I often lock it down to 45 frames per second. In fact, the best targets to reach, in my opinion, let's say for a 90 Hz panel, is 30 frames per second, ideally 45 is better, 60, and 75, and if you can do 90 frames per second, and in some cases I can do that with a 5090, but like I say, you don't need it. And in tandem with this, if you would prefer to use motion reprojection, depending upon your headset, because right now Pimax motion smoothing is pants, it doesn't work very well, but say you've got a Megan X, a Quest 3, a Vario Aero, you know, a native SteamVR headset such as a Big Screen Beyond, you can use motion smoothing or motion reprojection, depending on how the manufacturer calls it. It's basically frame generation for VR, and it adds a fake frame which gives you a perceived 90 frames per second in the headset. That is definitely the smoothest way, the best way to experience incredible smoothness, but the trouble is there is a bit of a trade-off to that, and that is sometimes you'll see artifacts on the wing or the prop where, you know, it won't look quite right. That's something that doesn't really bother me so much, especially as I do feel motion smoothing in general is getting a lot better. But ideally, tune your system for 45 frames per second with a 90Hz panel. That will give you one fake frame to give you a perceived 90 frames per second. If you start getting into the realm of using 2 fake frames, that's when you're going to start seeing more artifacts. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. Oh, what else then? Resolution of your headset. A pretty obvious one, folks. Like, I'm running at the moment 5700 by something with this, which is a crazy high resolution. A lot of VR headsets these days, unfortunately, well, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. We want high resolution because the visuals are amazing, but unfortunately it does mean that it's really hard on your GPU. Think of like running 2 8K screens or 2 4K monitors together. That's what it's like, folks. So I would recommend, even with a top-end system, if you just back your resolution off to about 75%, it won't have a massive impact. Either that, or use DLSS 4 or 4.5 at full native resolution, upscale it using the second transformer model. But either way, folks, it's a case of playing around with it and getting to know what your system can do, or can't do in this case. So again, I go through that in more detail in my full VR settings, but just keep an eye on that resolution, guys, because VR headsets are getting pretty damn high now with resolution. Even the Quest 3, for goodness sake, is pretty hard to run when you've got it on godlike mode, or the other one now, better than godlike. You know, it can get quite taxing even for a very high-end GPU. Right, a couple more things and I'll leave you alone. Yeah, just a little thing about config files. There's a lot of YouTubers out there that, it's crazy. They'll do a VR settings guide and half of it will be messing about with config files in the flight sim and in your NVIDIA app and all that. You know, with all due respect, it's great to mess around and tweak, but keep in mind, this sim gets updated a lot. And as soon as it gets updated, chances are all those config files are going to be overwritten and you'll have to do them all again. And it really brings about a obsession, a unnatural, unhealthy obsession of chasing the perfect VR performance. Don't worry about it, folks. Honestly, do a set and forget scenario. You will experience stutters from time to time. Even I do, for goodness sake. I do experience stutters, absolutely. The sim sometimes will run like a pile of crap for me as well. That's just the way it is. It's the game we're playing here, folks. This is the highest end, the most complex thing you can probably do with a consumer-based PC, with a VR headset. It's insane. So you will have to sometimes accept that the performance won't be always where you want it to be. And I have tried pretty much all of the little hacks and config files out there, and they just don't work like they used to. In the past, I used to do loads of them, but VR settings is actually a lot easier than it used to be thanks to better optimizations with the sim. And you can thank things like the PSVR 2 impending release for that, okay? As much as you might not like it, the PSVR 2 release is really making Asobo tidy up all of that rogue code to make sure the sim is running better. Just a little top tip, folks, anyway, in my opinion. You can disagree if you want, that's fine, but that's what I think. Now, obviously, one of the biggest performance benefits we have now in MSFS 2024 is Foveated rendering, that is fixed and dynamic. Now with all headsets you can benefit from this. If you switch this little setting on and then adjust this scaling slider, I'd recommend no less than around 35, preferably 40, especially with fixed foveated rendering headsets, maybe 30 to 35 if you've got a VR headset with eye tracking, because it will follow your eyes and it's a little less noticeable. If you have a headset with eye tracking, make sure eye tracking is turned on in the software. It's one of the biggest deals for VR for many years actually. So Asobo, if you're watching this, thank you for implementing this into the sim, and I really hope it can continue to improve. And really, I think that's all I'm going to say for this particular video today. If you'd like this kind of series of just talking about top tips, let me know. I can do plenty more of these, but that's a lot of information I've said today. So really make sure you think about what I've said. A lot of this is common sense. Make sure to check out my full VR settings guide, and I think that'll do for today. I'm going to continue flying over Ireland, and thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye bye for now.